Great, and we're live. So welcome everybody to this remote interview. My name is Lisette, and I'm interviewing people and companies doing great things remotely. And today on the line, all the way from South Carolina, is Abby Downing. And Abby, you are the partner and creative director at the Superfan Company, which is an all-female team of pop culture enthusiasts, which we're going to dive deeply into that. But you guys are creating powerful programs and products that engage superfans. So if people haven't guessed already, this is music industry related and graphic design related. But we're going to get into that. But before that, Abby, let's start with the first question, which is, what does your virtual office look like? What do you need to get your work done?
Well, thanks for having me on the podcast. And my virtual office looks like a lot of things. I have a home base, which is literally in my home. And it's an office. It's full of bookshelves and product samples and computers. I have a desktop and a laptop and lots of creative art and collections of things I can't get rid of. And I use that as my home base. My company produces a lot of physical products. So books, albums, VIP merchandise, bags, all kinds of stuff. So I need a place to be able to store and reference all of that. But on days that I need to get out, I work at the local Starbucks a lot. I travel back and forth to New York. So I work in airports and on airplanes and on site in New York occasionally. And every now and then when I just need to get away, I'll work from my parents' house in the mountains or, a friend's house somewhere. So I definitely have a home base. I have consistency, but thanks to my laptop, I jump around.
Love it. Love it. So we're going to talk a little bit about the different kinds of workplaces. But first, I want to talk about the Superfan Company. So what a lot of listeners may not know is that I actually have a background in music. I managed a band for a couple of bands for a long time and went on tour for years. And that's how my remote history started, was I started actually working from a van while on tour with my favorite band in the whole wide world. So when I saw your information, I was super excited to talk to you. What is the Superfan Company? And what do you guys do?
Yeah, so we started out as a company called Zine Pack about 8 years ago, a small startup. And when we started, we were creating a product called a Zine Pack that was a mini magazine with an album in it. So basically a deluxe version fans could buy for a few dollars more, and it had exclusive photos, interviews, all kinds of really cool content, and some kind of merchandise piece in it. We did that for the first few years, and obviously music sales started to change a lot. And, bands and artists are only putting out an album, maybe once a year, maybe once every 3 years. So we were really lucky that our clients wanted to work with us on a more regular basis, which allowed us to kind of explore different avenues of helping them with their VIP packages, helping them with their fan clubs, starting merch for them to sell online. And then we also got into some other spaces based on knowing those artists. So we've started doing a lot with ticket delivery for festivals, and started also working outside of the music industry with sports teams and corporate partners and a little bit of everything. So we've really expanded, but it's still all in that pop culture space.
Wow, exciting. And when I saw the artists that you've worked with, or some of the things you've worked with on your roster, really interesting people, and looks like some really interesting projects. Do you have any favorites?
Yeah, we like to say our clients would make the most interesting cocktail party guest list of all time, because it really spans the gamut. I think some of my favorites are probably Jimmy Buffett. I've been a fan forever, so to be able to work with him was just really exciting. He's such a brilliant businessman that was a really interesting. I'm looking at my bookcase to see what else jumps out. We're working currently with the Flatbush Zombies, and they're amazing and super creative, so that's been really interesting. We just did a really cool concept with Stagecoach Music Festival, and we did their ticket delivery in these boxes that pop up. And so on social media, everyone was taking pictures of them and creating their own little photo shoots. So that was really fun to see. And we actually just did something for JoJo Siwa. I don't know if you know who she is, but she's basically all glitter all the time. So that was a very different vibe and style for us to get into.
Cool. I bet it's really fun to do all these different styles because I'm sure every artist is their own brand, right? So then trying to capture that graphically or even in these packages must be really fun.
Exactly. Yeah. Everything from Katy Perry to Paul McCartney and Phil Collins. There's really no similarities there.
Right, right. And I saw also Dolly Parton. I was a big fan of Dolly Parton growing up. My whole family was. So that was really fun to see on the list as well. So
yeah, Dolly Parton is one of my favorites for sure.
Yeah, amazing woman. Absolutely amazing woman. Just a great history. So you guys, your company is based in New York City, but everybody works remotely. Why is it set up that way?
Well, we need to be flexible. So my partner, Kim, lives in New York. We have an office space in New York, similar to what I have here, a home base for everybody. But our clients are everywhere. Our vendors are everywhere. So we really need to be able to be on the move all the time. So Kim spends a lot of time in LA. She'll go anywhere for a meeting, but it's usually LA or New York. My production manager uses our office as a home base for all her samples, but a lot of days she'll work from home just because she's more productive. My project manager, who's amazing, was just actually on a 2-week vacation all over Italy. And so she's in from there. So it's just nice. Our hours generally are not 9 to 5 because we're working with people in different time zones and different vendors and very quick deadlines a lot. So we need to be as flexible as possible. And it's just easier for us to be able to do that from wherever we need to.
So how do you communicate with each other as a team?
We are in constant communication. We use Slack, the app, which has really changed our life. We've been using it for a couple years now. It's cut down drastically on emails, which is fantastic. So we really only use email for vendors and clients, and almost all of our internal communication is via Slack and phone calls. I'm a really big believer on getting on the phone and just talking through something. It alleviates a lot of back and forth. We'll do video calls a lot when the team needs to show me something from New York or I need to show them something. So technology has really sharing communication like on a constant basis that doesn't really hinder us at all.
And how do you usually talk with your clients? Because they must be all over the place.
They are all over the place. So a lot of it is email. There's a ton of emails flying around from clients, but we also try to get on the phone with them as quickly as we can. We really meet our clients where they're at. So we have one client who's a lot better through text message. It's really not a typical way of doing business, but with him it works. So we text him to get answers, to get approvals. Other clients that terrible at email, so we just pick up the phone and call them. We have one client in LA that will ignore our emails forever and ever until we show up in LA, and then it's great. We have a wonderful meeting with him. So we really try to meet people where they're at to make life as easy for them as possible.
So interesting, right? Because every client really has their own quirks and their own communication preferences, right? So if when you're servicing other people, then you really have to adjust to them.
Exactly. And we're really flexible. We're a small team. We pride ourselves on being really easy to work with and being really flexible. So that's just part of the way we like to operate, is making it easier on everybody else and not having super stringent rules on how we're going to get it done.
So in terms of then Slack, you said that it's really dramatically cut down on the number of emails. But on the other side of that, people have also said that Slack can be sort of like this bombardment because you're talking more and it's more conversational in some ways, and it's more like instant messaging. Mm-hmm. And so have you also found that like going from emails to going to Slack, has it also been sort of, like a water hose of information? How do you guys manage that?
It was definitely intense at the beginning. It was a lot, but I think because our team is so small, our core team is only 4 people right now. So while we do use it very conversationally, it's not an overwhelming number of people. So we have channels for every project. So it's all broken out that way. My my production manager will leave a lot of channels that are not currently active for her, that she's not in that step of the process, and she'll peace out, and, we'll just bring her back in when we need her. But it's just helped us organize a lot. We also use a program called Pipedrive, where we sort projects for where they are in our process, whether we just have a wild idea, we haven't talked to them yet, or we've actually pitched it, or it's in pricing, whatever. So between Slack and Pipedrive, we're able to be organized and moving forward without having to constantly be like doing those 2-hour team calls to like figure out where everybody is.
Yeah, online tools have really helped come a long way in terms of task tracking and time management in that respect.
Yes.
I use Pipedrive myself. I'm a huge fan. Love it. Love it. Love it. And it made me hyper aware of how many balls I had been dropping before I installed it. So
I know if we don't check it for a couple of days, we're like, oh gosh, like what happened to that one? We really need to check back in.
Yeah, indeed. So in the same vein as getting too many messages, sort of the fire hose of messages, it sounds like you're also working with clients from all over the place. And there is this problem that a lot of people complain about, which is this being always on and sort of this 24/7, because we can work from anywhere and anytime, we tend to. How do you manage that for yourself and at the company?
Yeah, it's a constant battle, I think. We really are on all the time because of the nature of this business, the entertainment world. It's not a 9 to 5. So we need to be flexible in how we manage that. But we do a really good job of shutting down when we can. So this week, if it's quiet on Friday, we'll take a summer Friday and we'll get out of the office, we'll get out of our house, wherever we are, and we'll respond to emails or we'll be on our phones, but we won't have to be tied to a desk. For remote working people, we're pretty consistent in being at our computer, at a desk or a table somewhere. So for us, summer Fridays are a great respite if we get it. My production manager doesn't start her day usually until 10 or 11, because if she's on the phone with China or working late at night, those hours work better for her. Whereas I usually work really early in the morning. So by the mid-afternoon, I need a break and go walk my dog or do something like that. So we try to take little breaks where we can, but in terms of being available, like we generally are always available, and then just try to balance it out where we can. When we have some time, we have some breathing space, we take it.
And do you have some sort of a team agreement in place with the team, or is everybody just on Slack and saying like, hey, I was up really late with China last night. I'll be taking the morning off. I mean, how do you have some sort of like core hours thing that the team needs to be there, or?
Our core hours are pretty much like 10 to 5 is when we really expect people to generally be around. But my partner, Kim, she does a lot of meetings. She does all of the inbound business. So she might be recording a podcast or be in meetings all day. So we live and die by our Google calendars. So all of our calendars are shared. So if Kim is going to be out of the office all day, it's in her calendar. So we know. If I have a dentist appointment, it's in my calendar. So there's really no privacy from that standpoint. We have everything in there. So, if it's 11 o'clock and Amy knows she's not going to be in until noon the next day, she'll put it in her calendar or she'll put it in Slack. But I think being a small team allows us that really wide flexibility that we wouldn't otherwise be able to have if we had a huge team that we were working with.
So so you said that your company started 7 years ago with Zine Pack. How has the way that you've worked changed since 7 years ago? Sort of some of the main things that have changed.
Yeah. So much has changed. I feel like we've pivoted like every year or so. But when we started, there was the two co-founders and myself. It was just the three of us. And we were literally working from our kitchens in New York, in the city together, bouncing around to different restaurants and different people's apartments. And over the years, we grew to a team of, I think, about 17 people. And Walmart was our first customer. when we were doing the Zine Pack product, and we were just cranking them out. I mean, so many every year. And it was really, it was almost scientific. We had a process. It was very clear. So we were able to build the team and crank out more and more product every year. Then as the music industry really changed a lot about 3 years ago, streaming became such a big deal. Sales of music went down. Artists really wanted to start reaching fans differently. And so with that change, I started doing more projects that were really completely custom every time. There is no equation. There is no real process. It made it harder to work with that very large team because we spent more time managing people and figuring out how to do 30 different kinds of projects as opposed to doing the same one over and over and over again. So we went back to a smaller team, and now it's almost a free-for-all. It's a very organized free-for-all because everything we do is custom. So we have the same process in terms of pitching the client, talking to the client, working through. But the difference in designing a black unicorn sequin backpack and a 200-page coffee table book is very different. So now that our team is back to being really small, we're actually working more like we did when we started the company. So we've kind of come full circle.
Interesting. And what's challenging for you guys at the moment in terms of working remotely? What do you still struggle with? Or what do you newly struggle with?
Yeah, I think for myself personally, the biggest struggle is, there's two things really. Sometimes the human contact factor, becomes, I'm not seeing people in my day-to-day necessarily. If I'm super busy and I'm not leaving my office at home, then the only person I'm talking to is my dog, which, you can start to feel crazy after a while with that. So that becomes a challenge. I think that's where working at Starbucks occasionally, there's a new social club opening in Charleston that's really being targeted for remote workers. It's not a remote work space, but it's going to have space as part of it that you can work in, which will be really great. So I think those things will kind of help that battle. The other challenge for me being a partner in the company is a lot of you don't necessarily get a seat at the table virtually sometimes in the larger conversations. Some companies that run in a more old corporate way, if they don't see you physically sitting across from them, they don't consider you part of that conversation. And I think that's something that we really battle because we pride ourselves on big ideas. So when your big idea is not being heard just because you're not physically in the room, that's really frustrating. So we're always trying to work on how to balance that and how often do you get on a plane and show up and walk in the room, and how often do you say, my idea is just as good from here and you don't have to pay for the plane ticket, so listen to what I have to say. And that's a challenge.
Has that changed over time, or is it sort of still on the cusp of changing, that people need you to physically be there at the table instead of via video conference call, for example?
I think it's tough because it's definitely a personal preference. There are people that are very open to it and they don't ever have to meet you in person, and they'll completely trust you, and it's hunky-dory. There are other people that if they don't see you, they really are not big believers in what you're doing necessarily. So I think that personal preference factor, it makes it hard because you're always having to gauge who you're talking to and how to best handle it. So I think that's, again, where the flexibility comes in and saying, okay, this guy's been running his company like this for 30 years. It's not going to work. Like, I'm going to have to get there. I'm going to have to be in the room and
Right.
trying to balance that.
Right. It's such a different environment, actually. So you guys are the clients, and you've got a number of different customers. Each customer has their own communication preference, like email or phone or in person or video so it's the flexibility is really the name of the game there.
It is. That's really our key to flexibility and creativity. As long as we can balance those two things, those are our key ingredients for getting all this work done.
So I want to go back to something that you mentioned that that Charleston is opening, and you said it's a social club aimed at remote workers. So it's
Yeah.
it's a place where you can go to work. Also, like it's like a co-working space, but you said it was more for social
Yes.
interactions. Can you tell us more about that?
I can't. I'm so excited about it. They are not open yet. They're under construction, but they are going to be a social club. They're going to have a pool, and they're going to have a small music venue and a restaurant and a smoothie bar and a gym. I mean, it's really a lifestyle they're creating, but they're going to have space within it with work tables, conference room, phone booths, so that if you are a member, you have a space to go and work, meet clients, do what you got to do, and you get all the lifestyle pieces with it, which is really exciting. So
Yeah, and very different than a co-working space.
Yes, yes. And we have in New York, we work in a WeWork space.
Mm-hmm.
We have an office at WeWork, so we can jump around to those spaces all over the place, and WeWork is amazing. But the workspaces in Charleston are really expensive because property is expensive, and they haven't quite nailed down the whole co-working configuration like WeWork has. The offices in Charleston are huge and have big wooden desks and huge leather chairs, and it's like, that's not what we need. We don't need that kind of space. So I think that this new club is going to be really interesting. They're trying to put people that work remotely, that want to network, that have this lifestyle in the same space, and then give them, everything they need to succeed, which is a space to work, a space to work out, a space to be social. I think it's going to be really interesting.
It sounds amazing. I really love the spin-off from the regular co-working space into sort of a more lifestyle space, especially for remote workers. And I find it very curious that Charleston has not quite picked up on the co-working vibe yet, or that the offices are not yet picked up. Because, in some cities, when you go to Bali, it is made for digital nomads, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So in some cities are just in different places than others. So it's really curious.
It's crazy because so many people in my neighborhood are remote workers. I mean, when I built my house, I specifically built this house so it had an office. And all of the co-working space is just super traditional here. It doesn't, the WeWork in New York have one-person offices with glass doors, and they're super easy. And down here, it's just like these big corporate spaces that are expensive and just really not necessary for a big part of the remote population. So it'll be interesting to see how this new space works. And I'm totally blanking on the name of it, but I will share it with you afterwards.
Oh, great. Yeah, I'd love to put it in the show notes. Yeah, that would be great. So I also wanted to go back to, you said that you worked in various places. So you work from your home office, you work from the local Starbucks. When do you choose, how do you choose which space you want to work in? Are there certain tasks that you do, like when you're at the Starbucks, or is it just like you need to get out of the house, it's a mood, you need to get out, and you can do everything from anywhere? I mean, so is it task-based or is it mood-based depending on your space?
Yeah, I would say it's both. Probably mostly mood-based. If I get started really early in the mornings, and if I'm having a hard time getting going at home, it's just to get dressed, leave the house, find myself in a different space. If I'm doing important calls like podcasts or really important conference calls, I do those from my home office because it's quiet. So really, but for the most part, if I'm at Starbucks, I have my headphones in, have music on, and I'm just super focused. So sometimes if I feel the need to like really zone in on something, I might leave my home office just because it's a different space and a different vibe, and my dog's not there, and those kind of things. But yeah, I split time really just, sometimes I'm at home and I work from my dining room table or my couch or my back porch, but I try to have consistent hours and processes regardless of where I am. I just sitting differently or, holding my laptop in my lap instead of on my desk.
So in terms of your team, you said you've gone everywhere from the team. So you've had a few people all the way up to 17 people on the team. And now you guys are sort of this rock star 4-person team. What characteristics do you think, now that you've worked with so many people, what characteristics do you think make a good remote worker? Or what would you look for if you were going to hire other people for your team?
Yeah, that's a great question. Definitely trust. Trust is a big one. We don't want to be questioning where people are or, worried that they haven't shown up. Very high level communication skills are really important. Being able to be productive without being managed is really important. My partner, Kim, and I, we do not like to micromanage. We are big believers in having a team that is self-propelled and we can trust them and they do it on their own. So that is a really big piece of it. Like self-starter, like we're not going to check in on you at 8 a.m., but if you have something to get done by 9 a.m., we're going to assume you're doing it. So those are really the key factors. We're really independent in how we work. We work as a team close all the time for our individual task. Like it's, kind of independent free for all. And so we really have to trust that stuff is going to get done.
How do you deal with conflict when it comes up on your team? There must be disagreements.
Yes. In a creative world, there always is, and especially when you're dealing with super tight timelines, deadlines like we do all the time. I think the key is to pick up the phone because on Slack, just as in a text message, you can totally read it the wrong way. You can tone it meant to be there or vice versa. So I think that picking up the phone and just saying, hey, what's up? Let's work through this. That seems to quell it pretty quickly as opposed to stirring the pot or letting it brew through Slack where everybody's, making up their own story of what's happening.
Right. Yeah, indeed. Picking up the phone, just getting on a call with somebody with the voice, because as we see on social media, how people treat each other. I mean, if you read any of the Twitter, like any of the follow on Twitter comments from just about any controversial post, it's just awful what people say.
And you just, as a human, we insert our own emotion into things. So by doing that and by having expectations and by assuming things, it can get kind of messy. And especially when you're on an all-female team, that the work we do is really intense and it's really fast. And so if you don't just pick up the phone and check in, then, things can start to get a little heated and frustrating. But generally, anytime we can just pick up the phone and either as a team all talk or one-on-one, we work really well together and we know each other's, if I'm super cranky at 3:00 in the afternoon, they know I've reached my limit. Right. They'll leave me alone for a little bit until I can kind of regroup because I've been going since 7 a.m. So we know each other well enough now to work through some of that, but I'm a big believer in picking up the phone and just full transparency, talking it through.
Right. Yeah. I think a lot of people would benefit from a little less typing and a little more talking.
Yes.
In some instances. So I have a couple more questions. We're running out of time. Dang, it always happens, but I have a couple more questions. One's not necessarily concerning remote working, but I'm really curious about when you say that musicians are wanting to connect with their audiences in different ways, especially over since the last 3 years when the music industry has changed so much. How were they connecting before? And what is sort of the change in terms of how people are wanting to connect with their fans now?
Yeah, we kind of view it as a throwback, actually. So it seems that a lot of entertainment properties and musicians and teams are wanting to do things to connect with fans where they're at. So moving a little bit away from digital, not completely, because obviously social media, streaming, that's a big part of it. But really creating things that feel personal, that fans want to hold on to and keep and frame and put on social media, ironically. It just seems like they really want to connect a little bit on more of a personal level. So that's great. I mean, it just makes, if fans are paying tons and tons of money for these shows, especially if they're buying VIP tickets, I mean, the prices are astronomical. What are they walking away with other than a super great experience? They're probably going to get to meet the artist. They're probably going to get to ask questions now. They're probably going to walk away with something that is exclusive that you can't buy anywhere else. those kind of things just make the value intrinsically higher for what they're paying, which obviously helps when it's expensive.
Right. And man, I can remember, I was a record collector back in the day. And when you get a record and have the artwork of the record and what was inside was like so important. And almost now I almost feel like, now I just sort of click, it was iTunes and now it's Spotify, but now you just click a button and you don't get the full album anymore. You just get like this mix of songs all the time. So it's like the whole concept of just sitting down and listening to the B side of your favorite record. It's like,
yeah, and it's, vinyls are really coming back. Like they're starting to do a lot of vinyls again. Music sales are still high, and retail sales are surprisingly, people are still buying physical music for their favorite artists. So target the super fans, like the hardcore fans that want all of the information. They're consuming everything for that artist, team, brand, whatever it is. And so we're constantly trying to do, exclusive photos, exclusive content, help them learn something new about their favorite artists that their friends don't know, and that kind of thing, which just is exciting for people. So same thing with the festivals, it's not that much fun to hit print on a ticket and have a white piece of paper with a barcode. It's way cooler to get something awesome in the mail that you're excited by, that you're surprised by, and then you can take photos and share it with your friends, and you're already so excited about the festival, 6 weeks before it happens. So we love working in that space.
Oh yeah, all that anticipatory energy that you get beforehand, is because it's true. In before, the album was what was exclusive. Sometimes I remember driving from Colorado to Oklahoma just for this one album that was in a store, and I had to drive there to get it. And so it was just a road trip. And now, of course, you can stream it from wherever. Like the album is no longer exclusive.
Every Friday I'm streaming all the new music, which is great. You stay really up to date, but at the same time, it starts to feel pretty disconnected.
Right. Super interesting. Okay. So last question, or last couple of questions back to remote working. If you had advice, 3 questions. Have you worked in a traditional office setting before where you had to go in from like 9 to 5?
I have.
Would you ever go back?
But I think in working in the entertainment space, it's never going to legitimately be 9 to 5. And it's never legitimately going to be in an office Monday to Friday, because there's events everywhere and there's travel and all that goes with that. So I think as long as I stay in this industry, I don't really believe it would ever truly be like a corporate 9 to 5 situation. But I may have to give up working from my cozy home office, all the time too. So I would consider it for the right opportunity, but I think there would always have to be that flexibility factor just because of the nature of the work.
Right. It's true. And if we look back in terms of the industry, it was never really 9 to 5, probably, in the entertainment industry. I mean, like very few shows.
Work from a van.
Yeah. That was definitely not 9 to 5. It's like 9 a.m. to 5 a.m. maybe, but
exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So advice for people who are starting out with remote working, what would you tell them?
It's interesting. Anytime I tell people that I generally work from home, they all say, "Oh, I could never do that. I could never focus. I would be doing laundry all the time or watching TV," which has never been a problem for me. So I think my advice would be to, find a space, find a process, and really stick to it. It's nice to have the flexibility to go to the dentist when you need to, or go to lunch or whatever, but really being consistent in the way you work so that your coworkers know what to expect from you. They know how to get in touch with you. And then just being super communicative in how you talk about your work, your clients, your projects. It's really important when people don't see you all the time that you communicate really clear and concisely.
Indeed. And if people want to learn more about you, what is the best place to find information about you and the Superfan Company?
Yeah, so we both have websites, thesuperfancompany.com. And my website is abbydowning.com. And we're on Instagram for both. And we share a lot. My partner Kim shares a lot of stuff on her Instagram as well. And she's Kim Kaupe, Kaupe. And her Instagram is a really great source for entrepreneurs and female founders and all that kind of great content.
Love it. And I'll definitely link to all of that in the show notes.
Great.
Super interesting to talk to you today. Thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
It was really nice chatting with you. Thank you so much.
All right, everybody. Until next time, be powerful.